Self-development has this big problem of a lot of people think because they watched a video or read a book about self-development, they think now they developed. But that's not what it means. It doesn't suddenly make you better. Just because you had a meeting, just because you read a book, just because you watched a video, doesn't automatically mean that you solved the problem. But that's level one. For some people, solving a problem was having a meeting. Obviously, not the best way.
Hi, and welcome to the TD Meetup. My name is Alexander Richter. I'm a technical director for visual effects, animation, and games. And I worked at companies like VFX and Framestore on Avatar: The Way of Water and Monsters at Work. And today I wanted to introduce you to our monthly event, the TD Meetup, where we meet each month to talk about all the current topics in visual effects, animation, and games. And it's perfect for people who are interested in the technical field and who want or are currently technical director.
The focus of today and the reason why we want to talk about problem solving is because it is a key aspect, first thing in life, but also in the roles of technical roles in general, not only technical, but also creative, but we will focus more on the technical side. So every technical artist, every technical director, every software developer has to solve problems as a constant thing. There are creative problems, there are technical problems, there are life problems, there are different categories of problems, but we can put them in a general problem-solving scale, but we also look at a little bit from the technical visual effects, animation, and games side. And one of the reasons that I want to talk about it, because it is an essential element of working in visual effects, animation, and games, is to be a problem solver. And the better you are a problem solver, the more success you have in whatever you do, even as an artist. Being a problem solver and fixing your problems of your scene, of your environment, your asset, of the production, will allow you to work more on your art, to create better art, and to just focus more of your time on doing cool things. The quote that I want to start with today is basically this one. One of the hardest things in life is accepting that we have a problem. The second hardest is realizing that our solution isn't solving the problem, and we are back at square one, still facing the same. And that is the thing why we want to talk about problem solving. Every one of us solves problems. That's part of life. It doesn't matter what we do, we always solve problems. Every day is a problem. Working is a problem. Living is a problem, because everything is not as it should be, not as good as it should be. Something stands in our way. And so we have to make decisions. But the problem is, like with communication, everyone communicates, but a lot of people don't know how to communicate well. And the same applies for problem solving. Just because we solve problems on a day-to-day basis doesn't mean we solve them well. And understanding what a good solution to a problem is a key to be successful in whatever you do, basically. And that's what we want to talk about. How can we solve problems better? So what is a problem solver? A problem solver understands the root cause of the problem and offers an adequate solution in response to the situation. This is important. It's important that the solution is adequate. If we want to fix a scene that has some problems, but we only need this scene to work for like one shot, then we can spend a week fixing the scene, or we can just, fix it in the post, for example, fix it in the comp. And so there's different ways, and adequate is very important to the thing. So to become a problem solver, you need to have analytical thinking, which means attention to detail and technical expertise. Their creative problem solving doesn't mean you have to be a creative environment, but it means there is different ways. And you can find sometimes creative ways by looking at other things. There's this famous example of how they solved the problem of a train going into a tunnel. And there was a boom in Japan because the train was so fast that the air created this noise, basically. And they looked at birds, how they dive and how they move. And so they looked at the peak of the bird and they recreated this on the train. So it's a creative way of looking at something else and applying it somewhere else, basically. So that's what is meant to a creative. It means adaptability, curiosity, and always being open to learning new things. Strong communication and collaboration, because let's face it, most problems come from other people. If we think about it, life is about problems, but it's most of our problems often are other people at work, at home, and so on. So being able to communicate well with these people who create problems for us or who are in the way of us solving the problem and collaborate with them is an extremely important way of being a successful problem solver. And then time and resource management. Again, adequacy comes from what is the adequate solution for something. If you spend too much time for the reward that you get, you're not a problem solver, you're just overdoing it. So it's always important to decide how much time should I invest to solve the problem? Because if I invest too much time, then what's the point of this? Because I basically use too many resources to solve a problem that should have not been on that scale, basically. And that's one of the key elements of becoming a great technical artist and technical director in visual effects, animation, and games is to be a problem solver and to have these skills or build them over time. What is someone who seems like a problem solver but is actually not? And that is something that you see most people are, and that are problem fixer. Finds temporary fix, a bandage for the problem. So what does that mean? Instead of solving the problem, they're reacting to it. They find something that can diminish the effects of it. It doesn't mean that something temporary is always bad. Sometimes a temporary fix is totally fine because of resources and something like that, but it has to be a solution. That's the idea. It is consciously versus, oh, there's something, let's put some fix on it, let's move on. There's another problem, let's put a fix on it, let's move on, and so on and so forth. It's always this reacting which creates this problem fixer versus a problem solver, actually. Problems cost compound. So costs more and more afford to fix over time. So the longer you fix or ignore problems, the more they compound. And then at the moment when you have the least amount of time and resources, it explodes. At the end of the project, for example, if you ignore, let's say, a lighting problem, and every shot now has this lighting problem, suddenly at the end of the pipeline, when you go to rendering, suddenly all the shots are having some problems and you need to spend extra time to fix it, versus you spent a little bit time in the beginning to fix this problem, and now all the shots in the future have less problematic into the rendering. So that's the compounding effect that you can have. Problems arise again in worse times and contexts, obviously. Every time you think, let's keep this problem for later, it will show its head at the moment when you least need it, coming back to bite you ass. So often these solutions come at a later price. So being a problem solver means you find an adequate solution that removes the problem basically from your life. Being a problem fixer is you just put a bandage on it, but there is a big chance that this problem comes back to bite you later. And there's a big difference. So how do we know if we fix or solve a problem? And that's very important. That's what we want to do. There's like 3 levels of problem solving that I find really helpful to understand which level of problem solution are we. So first one is level 1. Solve the idea of the problem. That means talking about it, the idea. So we can talk, we have a meeting. The most common thing if you work in a production or in a studio is there is a problem, there's a meeting. That's it. Level 1 is a meeting. People talked about it. Sometimes people feel better about it. Self-development has this big problem of a lot of people think because they watched a video or read a book about self-development, they think now they developed. But that's not what it means. It doesn't suddenly make you better. Just because you had a meeting, just because you read a book, just because you watched a video, doesn't automatically mean that you solved the problem. But that's level 1. But we think about it. And so that's the level 1 of problem solving. So for some people, solving a problem was having a meeting. Obviously, not the best way. Level 2 is solve the fundamental needs of the problem. So we do something, basically there is some action, but maybe it's not the best action. We just do something. It's the bandage solution. It's the solution that works for now, but in a few months maybe explodes a little bit all around us. So that's the thing. So we don't solve it particularly, but we also not ignoring it. So it's a little bit on this side of we take action, but maybe the action are not well thought out. And then the last one is solve the problem for the goal, which means we look what is the problem that stops us to arrive at the goal. And then we find an adequate solution that actually removes the problem from this. And again, adequate is very important because we need to find a solution that doesn't cost too much also, but at the same time removes the problem in terms of costs and resources at the end of the day. And actually, there is a 0 level which means solve a self-created problem, which can happen very, very easily. For example, a very typical thing of creating a self-created problem is by ignoring things, you can compound to something actually new. You can do that, or doing other things, you can create new problematic things, antagonizing people or something like that. You can create out of one problem, you can create multiple problems basically, and then instead of solving the problem, you actually explode them. So this is how you can see them. To get from level 1 to level 0, it's mostly ego. I know better than you. We do it this way. It's always this, like, instead of looking at things, instead of looking at the problem, instead of looking at the solution, you just think you're better, you're stronger, you're wiser, and you make a decision that is actually very stupid and doesn't solve the problem at all, actually makes it worse. And that is the difference from level 1, just talking, to making it actually much worse, is often involve the ego. From level 1 to level 2 is action. The moment you take action, you change from level 1 to level 2. That means instead of just talking, you actually do something. Doesn't mean it's great, but it means you do something to stop the problem from happening, or stop the problem in general. Great. And then from level 2 to level 3 is basically investment. You invest time, thought, resources, money, whatever. It means instead of just taking action, you take action that are the best that you can think of. Very simple. And sometimes no action is actually an action, because you think about resources. Because sometimes it's like, we thought about it. The best action is I ignore it because it just happens once. So let's not waste time on that. Okay, let's do a few examples how this can look like in real life. Let's say problem is underpaid top employer. We probably on the other side, we are maybe the top employer in our company. And so how can the 4 levels apply on this one? So let's say the goal of the studio is to increase profit, obviously. So what would be a horrible level 0? Let's say you have a top employer, or you are the top employer, and you expect a raise. You should get a raise because you are doing a great job, and you have a conversation about your next payment, next contract. And so, what would be a level 0? Level 0 would be the nice salary increase and have a disgruntled, possibly leaving top employer. That is the worst thing. So you make something actually worse. What would be level 1? Just discuss salary increase. There's nothing, decided. We just talked. Somewhere in the future, we think about, giving you a salary increase. Just discuss. This is a level 1 solution. You talked about it. You had a meeting about it, basically. And for some people, it's a solution. For some people, I talked about it. Sounds good. But if there's a danger of, not delivering. Level 2 is you offer a salary increase, but a small one. And it's maybe in a way, a disappointing one. Like the 2% salary increase or something like that. And especially you're maybe under market value. And then finally, you don't have to give a salary increase, but you have to give a clear explanation, and you have to give a chance for a salary increase. So even if you don't give a salary increase, and that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be. It depends on the situation, obviously. But you need to make the other person solve the problem of the other person of, hey, I'm expecting more money. I'm expecting being validated. And so you have to do this, and you have to give the other person a chance to actually earn more money, because at the end of the day, your goal is increase profit. And if the employer works harder and better for you, then you are also fine to give it. Or you just increase the salary, but explain that I increase your salary because I loved your past performance and I would like to see more in the future. Meaning, the better the employer works, the more you make profit. That's the idea, basically. Dating apps or social media in general, it has a paradox. So what's the goal of dating apps? Provide an ongoing paid dating service. Ongoing is very important. So where are most dating apps basically at? They're level 2. They're level 2 solutions. Encourage regular use of the app by providing a few successes, basically. So what's the problem? They're addicting, low value, disappointing, endless options, and retaining customers. So the problem of dating apps in general, and that's why they don't work in most cases, is because they're level 2 solutions, because they don't want you to become level 3 solutions, because when you are a level 3 solution, you will leave and you will never come back and you will not pay them again. But if you are always on the brink of finding love and success or whatever, then you will come back because you think they will provide you with a solution. So what is level 3 solution for dating apps? Customers find love and delete the app mostly forever. That's a level 3 solution. They come to you, they pay you to find love and relationships, and you deliver. That's level 3. But the problem with this, how will continuous profit be achieved if everyone finds love in the next few, I don't know, 100 years, basically? So that's a problem. And that's same thing with social media. We see a lot of these 1 and 2 level solutions most of the time. Often people choose level 1, like a meeting, and level 2, just some random action, is because short-term thinking. They're lazy. They're comfortable. They love their old solution. We always done it this way. I'm pretty sure some of you heard of this argument is like, hey, why do we do it this way? Because we always done it this way. They lack vision. They only see one solution. That's it. They don't believe in alternatives. Like how many conversations we had about like, hey, this is not a good way. Let's try something else. No. I don't think there's something else will work. Lack of ability and knowledge. If someone doesn't know and cannot do it, then they feel like it's impossible. Ego, social pressure. If everyone else says this is the best solution, it's hard for you to say no, it's not. And profit, as we talked about social media things. How do we solve a problem? Let's dive into this one. Let's break it down how to solve problems in general. So first one, we need to define a clear goal. What is in the way of the goal? Because the problem has to be somewhere in the way. So the more we understand the goal, the more we know how much resources we should apply to the problem. So let's say the goal is deliver a shot in 1 week. Okay, understand the problem. The problem is shot opening takes 1 hour. So if I always take 1 hour to open or to work with it, just too long. I cannot deliver in 1 week because this shot is too broken, basically. Okay, so let's break down the problem. Scene must be too heavy or problematic. Okay, so what can be the solution? Remove problematic element in the scene. Okay, that means I need to open the scene and spend some time and try solution. Open the scene and search for problematic element. That's it. Nothing crazy. But at the end of the day, the important part is you need to know the goal. If you don't know the goal, you don't know how much resources you should be investing. Because a lot of people, and I see that very commonly, they will open the scene again and again and again and again instead of saying, hey, let me spend a few hours on fixing the scene so I will work faster. But if you know the goal and you know the timeline and you know the resources, then you can say, you know what, let me spend 4 hours trying to fix the problem so I can save 2 days. That's a good thing because then it means, yeah, makes sense. For example, problem. Maya crashes opening a scene. That's a very common thing. So everyone experienced that, not only with Maya, but with every other software. So the first thing that you need to do is understand the cause. Let's look at it from broader to more detailed. Okay, first thing, is the crash related to the scene? So is it this scene or is it every scene? Meaning, is it Maya or is it the scene? Okay, so let's open another scene and see if it crashes. If not, it's this scene. Okay, is the crash related to the workstation or Maya software? Maybe it's just my computer. Maybe, this computer will be okay. So hey, can you open this scene? Oh, yeah, you can. Meaning, it looks like my computer. Okay, let's try this. Is something in the scene crashing Maya? Meaning, is there an asset or a shader or a texture or something, a missing path that is crashing the scene? So let's try to figure out if there's something weird, like a 1 million, vertice object or something. Okay, let's remove the biggest one. Let's remove a few one. Let's delete half of the scene and still look at if it's still crashing. What about the objects causes the crash? So if we find like an object, what is it that actually causes the crash? Is it like the poly count, the geometry, some settings? So let's tweak a little bit. Let's play around with them. Let's remove something. Let's hide something. Let's change something and see how this goes. And that's how we basically understand the cause, by basically detective work. So that's what we do. Okay, now that we did this, so how do we fix it? So is the crash related to the scene? Fix the scene, obviously. Is the crash related to my workstation? Meaning, okay, if it's workstation, then I have to look at my computer. Restarting is always a good thing. Worst case, maybe I have to reinstall Maya because maybe something in the settings broke. Okay. Is something in the scene crashing? Okay, maybe then I have to fix crashing objects. And also, what about the object causes a crash? Then I maybe have to fix some of the elements. And one of the way I can do it is open the original object instead of the scene. I can import just part of the scene and so on. So there's a lot of things I can do. But at the end of the day, it's basically breaking it down into small pieces from the biggest one, like, Maya workstation, to the smallest one, there's a shader or there's a geometry. And so we go from the top to bottom until we get it. But we should always start at the top. Is it me first? Is it my workstation? Is it my Maya? Because maybe it is actually one of that, and it has nothing to do with this C. So we need to start always with the broad one, and then we go down to the details like that. Because the broad one is also easy to test. I can just ask my neighbor, hey, can you open the scene? Does it work? If it works for you, that is my problem, basically. One of the other big things of problem solving is obviously Python, because Python is the key ingredient for solving problem because it makes two things. First, it makes workflow easier and faster. And second, it makes workflow possible. So easier and faster, everyone knows this. You build a tool that can automate process. And this, for example, is making things possible. So you select some faces, and then you create a scatter tool. So the moment you press the button, it scatters objects around the faces. This is impossible. This is something you cannot easily do, especially not in Maya. So you need to build this tool to make something possible. Same thing here. Yes, you can do this manually. You can put the trees or flyers or houses or lights or whatever, but it takes a lot of time, So Python could be something that allows that to make it possible or easier at least. Same thing here. You can create a cloth tool, for example, to simply apply to create some node trees and so on and so forth. And you can make this kind of custom versions that not only uses the maybe default custom nodes that you create, but you create a custom gizmo with calculation that are not as easy without some coding, basically. And then you can create this overlay for review purposes and so on. And at the same time, it has render threads, which means at this time, Nuke didn't have render threads, so you can only run it on one thread. But this tool allowed us actually to open multiple Nuke instances, so it will render, like, depending on how many threads you open, 5 times, 10 times faster for one sequence rendering, basically. And yeah, if you guys interested, by the way, and I'm offering Python courses. We are just having one next Monday starting that. We do beginner courses, we do advanced courses. We also look at that. We cover every DCC under the sun. One of the best way to solve problems is to start thinking logically. And one of the best to learn logical thinking is to learn something like scripting, because scripting allows you to learn how to look at the problem, break it apart, and translate it into Python code. And if you do that a bunch of times, it will automatically train your brain on solving problems. So one of the best ways to learn better problem solving is to learn scripting in Python, because it will automatically force you to become a problem solver, because creating code is a problem solving in itself. The best skills for technical artists, and I want to kind of finalize this, is to become a great problem solver. Every technical artist or director who is great are also great problem solver, because they know how to write good Python code, they know a variety of software packages, and they have a certain amount of flexibility. So they're not stuck with every problem. They try to think outside of the box and so on. They're also decent artists. Generally, even technical directors should be decent artists, because the more you know the art, the more you understand how to support the artist, basically. They're great at communicators. Every technical artist and director has to be a great communicator. As I said in the beginning, most problems come from bad communication in other people. So the better you are in communication, the more you can solve these kind of breaking points, and the more you can communicate between artistic and technology, which is a very important thing. They have production experience. The more you want to be a supporter, the more you need to know a production. You cannot just be alone in your room and become a good supporter. You need to be in the wilds and working on things in a team. That's a very key aspect. There's a series from Pony Smasher, The Problem Solving of Filmmaking, part 1 and 2, really cool. Mostly about how to solve a directory problem, basically, but it's the same principles at the end of the day, is like looking at things, analyzing things, breaking things down, and trying to find a solution. I kind of like this, especially for filmmaking particular. If you are interested in more in the future, also obviously future TD meetups, feel free to sign up for my newsletter if you're not already. Basically, we do this every month. Every month we try to cover different topics, and try to be also creative on that, and also talk about things that we don't normally hear in the industry or something, like today, for example. And that's basically it. Let's dive into the Q&A, and I'm happy to hear from you guys what you think about problem solving. If you are a problem solver, if there's any particular thing you solved that you were proud of, or what you learned in the last few years, I think that would be really cool.
Thanks for your talk. Really appreciate it as always. I'm going to talk about an issue that I'm having at work at the minute, which may be a different conversation. So you mentioned that the problems that we have is generally other people and bad communication. I actually have someone who's trying to fix our render farm at the minute who is bad at communicating and he's very dismissive of problems that are happening. He's always blaming other people. When you encounter difficult people like this, obviously I'm trying to be as nice to him as possible, but in terms of trying to move it forward, like, do you have any suggestions of when you're working with difficult people, how to help move forward? Because in our industry, we are going to encounter different egos. That's just how it is. We're always going to try big egos. Sometimes the further up you go. So if you have any kind of insights into kind of smoothing that along, that would be helpful for me.
Yeah, I think it's also a great kind of connection to this, because problem solving is one skill, but as I said, communication is the other thing. So you need both. At the end of the day, you cannot solve a problem if it is people that are the problem, or you cannot solve a problem if you need someone else's help to solve it and they don't want to do it. So then you can have the best solution in the world, but if other people will not go along with your solution, then this solution is pointless, So yeah, there's multiple levels of solution. It depends a little bit on the situation, obviously. So first thing, the hierarchy allows you to overthrow him. Then you just explain it and then say, we will do it. That's the easiest part. It's you should always explain it, even if it's if someone is actually not in the in the situation of deny you this request. It's nice to at least give a little bit of an clear understanding why you do this. But yeah, so that was the first thing. If it's more like, it's his department, it's yours department, so you have this like, same equal basically situation. I think the way that you can do, there's like two ways. You can either convince them, or you can bring other people that, that give like the power to you, basically. So first thing, convincing. Convincing always means you have to come from their perspective. What is their biggest interest? For example, I had this post that I gave, and I mentioned this also in the masterclass, is one of the important things when you start coding in Python is to ask for more coding time, because maybe you're an artist and people are not used that you give you coding time. It's for them, it's a waste, because they pay you for making art. They don't pay you for creating tools. And so one way that you should convince people is by giving data. How much time will this tool save me and others? How much money will it save? Depending on who you talk to. If you talk to a producer, it's always about time. How much time? Because that's how they calculate you. They say, hey, this can do 2 shots in a day. If you tell them, hey, if you give me 1 week to build this tool, I can do 3 shots in a day. That's a great deal, depending on how long the project is, So that is one way. So in this case also, I would, if there is something that you can see the person cares about, or there's like, sometimes it's pride, sometimes it's efficiency, sometimes it's how they look to other people, whatever it is, just try to argue in them. If you notice they are logical people, try to be logical. If you notice they're emotional people, don't bring logic too much, bring it in, but also try to adjust the argument to them, not to yourself. So think what is their priority? Who do they have to please? And if you can make your argument of pleasing the person that they care about, then that will be a good thing. The other thing is you bring other people into the play, and then you can basically force their hand. That's what I do sometimes. And that's what I did in a few projects. Is basically I had also pipeline TDs and coders who were absolutely dismissive and they didn't want to do it. So what I did is I presented my case to a group. So I went to the supervisor. I said, hey, after I tried with the person basically, but then I went to the supervisor, to the producer, and said, hey, we should do this. This is really good. Here are the facts. This is important. This will help the group. This will help me, the project, you, everyone. And then basically with the support of the producer, of the supervisor, of the other people, of the lead, you can basically go. It doesn't have to be antagonizing. It's not automatically you go there and you say, hey, the supervisor is now on my side. Go fuck yourself. That's not the particular what I mean. But sometimes it's about the supervisor comes maybe to this guy and says, hey, we looked at this. There is a problem. Can you fix this for us? And then the pipeline TD is like, okay, yeah, sure. You know what I mean? So it's not even particularly that there's a conflict. It's more like you bring people in, you make people aware of the problem, and they have to decide. Because, for example, a lead's, a producer's, supervisor's role is to avoid this kind of problems. They cannot sit idle if there is actually a problem that can affect the project. So if you make a good case and bring it to these people, they will probably take action. You know, especially if you prepare it in a way that you say, okay, there's this problem, and if we change this in the pipeline, we can fix this. You basically already served the meal, so they basically say, okay, then let me write an email to the pipeline guy so we can fix this. You know, that would be a second way. So it's like there's two ways basically that I can see usually can, but in a way, one is the active forcing someone's hand, and then one is the passive forcing someone's hand. But that's the only way. Like if someone is not willing to do it, there is only ignoring or forcing. There's no like. What is there? Like if you tried everything, if you try to convince them, if you try to talk to them and they still don't want to, there's only two ways: do nothing or force someone to do their job. And then you have to decide which is the best strategy. You generally don't want someone being disgruntled. You know, you never want someone to just do something hatefully. Like, you know, yeah, sometimes there are people who, like, you know, you cannot make them, you cannot please them, but you should at least, that's why I also said you should at least explain it, even if you force someone's hand actively. You say, do you have to do it? But let me explain it to you why this is important. Because at least they will come from an understanding instead of just, you do this and, you know, that's it, basically. But that's how I would see it. Is either you know, if you have the power, force their hand, explain it also. Or if you don't have the power, bring people in who have the power, who have an investment into this actually to do it right, basically.
Thank you. Yes, I have got the producer on board to kind of show them that I'm trying to make things happen, but it's not happening, just so you can witness with your own eyes. And then, yeah, some things have kind of forcefully being done there. Yeah, thank you for your explanation.
Often the problem comes also because some people don't understand what's going on. For example, the producer or the supervisor maybe are not familiar with the pipeline elements as much. You, for example, you did, for example, the Python courses. Now you're maybe more familiar. Maybe you don't understand everything, but you understand enough that you can see that there's a problem, and you can kind of, again, one of the biggest communication aspects of TDs and TAs is you can create a bridge between someone who has no understanding and someone who understands. And then you can translate, hey, supervisor, hey, producer, there is this problem that I noticed, and this is a potential solution which will be important and which will explode on your face. So let's address this. Is there a planned release date for the Python or Flow course? Not planned, but I'm currently working on a project where I have to use Flow. And so I kind of decided, hey, that's actually a good opportunity to actually make the course. I would say, realistically speaking, at the end of the year, I see the course being finished, probably with Python for Blender. Both, one of these. But yeah, I would say end of the year, Python for Flow. If you help yourself to become a better problem solver, it really can change your life. It is one of the most undervalued skills, like becoming a better communicator. Not just because you talk, you are a good communicator. Not just because you solve daily problems, artistic, technical, and life, you are a good problem solver. It's like with Google. Just because you use Google doesn't mean you use it well, fast, and efficient. Same thing with problem solving. Just because you solve problems in different directions doesn't mean you do it well. And again, ask yourself in the future, which level of problem solving you're actually doing. Are you level 1? Meaning you just talk about it and you don't do actions. A typical problem solving thing is we had a meeting about it. If it was just a meeting, there's a highly likelihood that was not a solution. Sometimes it can be because you decide not to do something. That is an absolute valid solution. But in general, if a problem solving is just a meeting without actions, usually it means it's level 1. So level 2 is, did you do a certain action, but it was more of a bandage action. It was more of, you did some action that felt like it solves the problem. Maybe it solves the problem, but does it solve it adequately? Does it solve it in the future? Let's say the most typical thing I see in scripting, people write scripts that work for this situation or this project, but the script will die on the next project. Sometimes that's okay, because this is a script that is only done for this project. It doesn't have a future. That's okay. Then it's okay. But sometimes this tool can be used in the next project. But now in the next project, you have to spend extra time, and basically it's useless until you fix this. And so you kind of solve the problem, but it will come back next time. So not really. And then level 3 is, you looked at the problem, you found the best solution, and you find also an adequate amount of resource for it. So you don't overinvest. You don't build a whole pipeline if you just can buy one. But you also don't underinvest, meaning the problem is not adequately solved and will come back to bite you in the next few weeks at the end of the project when you don't have enough time.
I welcome you to join us live and also watch the previous episodes, and I'll see you on our next TT Meetup.